Hi, everyone. Welcome. And before we start this program, I want to introduce a young person who recently won an award. She's been working with Mind, Body, and Soul. And the reason she works with Mind, Body, and Soul is to encourage young people to talk about mental health, to talk about learning disabilities, because she understands the stigma attached to it. So Veronica recently won a pageant. I think she's Miss East Africa or something like that, but she'll talk to you about it. So Veronica, if you can just quickly introduce yourself for 5 minutes and why you're here with Mind, Body, and Soul
She's
today.
Victoria, she's not Veronica.
Victoria, yes. My apologies, I saw her laughing. Veronica, Victoria, please introduce yourself. Can you unmute, Vicky?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So hi guys, my name is Victoria Nakata Nikita. Recently I did a pageant called Miss Pride of Africa and I came first runner-up, which I feel like they stole my crown because realistically the winner did not deserve the crown. That's cool. So obviously during the pageant, I actually put this charity into my campaign, and I did tell the audience about the campaign and what we do. And I feel like it was such a privilege because it's something that I actually want to be more involved in now that I have a platform. So every event that I go to or everywhere that I get called to, it's something that I have to always speak about because it's a campaign that I would want to build bigger because it's not going to be my last pageant. And even if I got onto the next pageant, it's a campaign that I still want to carry on. So you guys have my heart.
Thank you, Victoria. I called you Veronica. I don't know why Veronica is on my mind. So our special guest this evening is Trish. I think Trish is signed into Alice's Zoom, but she is called Trish. And the reason that I invited Trish today, I know that Trish, most of you will see Trish on this forum and, she's different. Trish, this forum is mainly for Black people. So you look a bit like out of this world. But Trish has a daughter who is of Black background. So the reason that I invited Trish today, we'll call Trish's daughter Rosie. Trish has a journey that she went through to be able to actually get Rosie diagnosed with autism. And it's again related to situations around stigma and the system and how they see the journey of an autistic Black child. So Trish, you're welcome. Just briefly tell us about your journey and how you've got Rosie as your daughter. And then we'll go to the second page of how you started the diagnostic stage. But I'll also invite other parents to join in and share experiences as we go along. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm Tricia and I was a foster mum first. I fostered Rosie from the age of 2. And when she come to live with me, she was, I don't know, I just kept saying, this child is not, she's too good. She was so good. It was unbelievably, if I brought her into a room, she would just stand where I put her and not move. She had a really tragic background. We're not going to go into that, but this is why. And then when she started settling, her behaviour, everything, she didn't speak. She used to lash out all the time and her behaviour just becomes really, really hard. And she struggled at school. When she started school, she struggled and everything was put down to attachment disorder because of lifestyles that she was born into. So I only had my daughter diagnosed 3 years ago, maybe 3, maybe 4 years ago. And
how old is Rosie now, Trish?
She's 13 and a half. So yeah, it took us a long time, even though school and education recognised that there was problems, they wouldn't have it, that it was anything but background problems.
So Trish, if we can explore, what do you think were the blockers to your daughter being diagnosed in time?
A lot of it was down to because she was in foster care, I didn't have any authority over it. Birth parents still had a big authority and didn't want her labelled. Their child does not act like this. They're other children. She was compared to other children and, you know, other family members, and they just say she had really bad behaviour. She's out of control, and she wasn't. She was just very, very misunderstood. And she didn't know how to control her feelings. So how would she understand anybody else's feelings?
You mentioned something really, really important that we see with children who are taken in care. And we have a big problem where as people of, you know, Black background, and I refer to people of Black background because most people right now will see that the research shows that people of color, the darker your color, the more racial prejudice you will face.
Yeah.
So even when you go down the triangle of racism, people of my skin face more racial issues than people of a lighter skin. So somebody can be white passing because maybe they're from the EU or they're, you know, Japanese or something like that, and they might face less prejudice compared to me of a darker skin. So when you mentioned something like Rosie being looked at in terms of attachment disorder, ADHD, or simply challenging behavior, how many homes, foster homes, did Rosie move to before settling down with you?
Right. So she comes straight to me. She'd been in one other foster home, but that was when she was a tiny baby. So she come to me straight from birth parents, well, birth mum, to be more precise. But I do know, like, I had a time where I needed to go away for a family thing, and I asked for respite care with other foster carers, and I only done it twice, and they were like emergency times what I had to do. The foster carer then said to me, I don't know how you cope with that. I don't know how you cope with her behaviour, how she lashes out, she just doesn't take notice to you. And I was like, well, if you put the time in with this child, then you're going to get something out of it. And don't get me wrong, we've had years and years and years of really hard work. But I now know that Miriam has a secure attachment with me. You know, she doesn't call me mum. She's never called me mum. She calls me Trisha. That's fine by me. That's more down to autism than anything. But we have an understanding of each other more because I've given the time. I do believe I fought to keep Miriam because they wanted her to move on. And I fought to keep her because I said, if you move her on, you're just going to break everything that we've built up together. And, you know, how she's now in school, she's very, very intelligent. Doesn't always understand what she's saying, but can tell you the right answers. And she'll hear words and use them, and you think, oh, she's really, really clever, this child. But when you get to the bottom of that, she isn't that. She is. She knows more stuff than me. But she is, and people say, oh, she doesn't look autistic. I mean, I don't know what an autistic child looks like, to be fair. Every child that I know through autism is different. And no one's got the same diagnosis.
Absolutely, Trish. And that's something that I wanted you to bring out quite a lot. So, because I struggle with either the system not understanding us, people of black background, because I meet so many children who have been given a diagnosis of ADHD or complex behavior disorder. And parents feel more comfortable with that diagnosis than saying that the child is autistic.
I honestly think it's a lot of people don't want their child to have this label. And I totally understand that people don't want this child to have the label. But coming in junior school, that is fine. Coming into senior school, your child needs that proper label. Otherwise, they're not going to get on in school. The work becomes harder. Having a label of ADHD does not cover autism. it's different. It's completely different. Having a label of behavioural problems, schools can actually say, we don't have to support you. You haven't got an EHCP plan. I know my daughter, if I didn't fight for years to have an EHCP plan, my daughter's school would be completely different now. It really would. It would be, I know how bad it would be, because it was bad at one time. She was in one school and they just kept saying she's lying, it's behavioural, it's all down to her background, and it just wasn't.
And that's the dilemma, Trish, when they say down to the background. Just because she is of a Black background, already she's been placed into a certain category. And this is where the delay in diagnosing our children comes. And then you find parents trying to struggle with extra tuitions, and the child feeling really under pressure because they cannot retain information as they should be. But the fact that they are communicating, going to the toilet, feeding themselves, people do not realize that they're actually on a spectrum.
Yeah.
Trish, could you tell us, when you got Rosie, and I know lovely Rosie, she's amazing. I've met her a number of times, and she tells you something as it is. And you can understand, being a professional, I met her for the very first time, and I knew that she's on the spectrum. From the way she communicated to me, from the way she spoke to me, and from how much she took from me as well as a person. And when you're not a professional, you can look at Rosie and think, wow, she's amazing. She goes for a jog every evening. She takes herself to the shop. Her routine is very fixed, and she follows that routine without change. And when you disrupt it, then things are very different. At what time did you manage to actually diagnose Rosie? And was it via the NHS, or did you take another pathway?
Right, it was eventually done privately, to be fair, but through the NHS, because I complained that much and screamed and shouted that much about it. I joined Knowsley Parent Care of Voice, and I got in with the council, and I sat on a lot of committees to say, this is not good enough. I am sick of being knocked back for my child when I know my child best. I agreed, Miriam, my daughter had attachment disorder, but attachment disorder, even though it never goes, you can form attachments afterwards, because then you're in a secure attachment. So,
but you can't with autism.
No, and so and they mirror each other, which is really hard. So I agreed from the age of 2 to let's see how it goes. And by the time she was, I would say 7, I was like, no, I don't agree anymore. She's very settled. And if we didn't stick to her routines, then it just didn't work for us. We have, certain things, how she does things, certain ways, as Justin, she goes boxing 5 nights a week. And if that one night, for instance, my car was broke last week, and it's murder. There's absolute ruptions, because it's not that she hates me for not taking her, it's breaking her routine.
Her routine, yeah.
Yeah, and it's the same with when she goes to school. When we first finish for school holidays, we always have an horrendous view, up to a week, I would say, of her settling, because her routine's broke. And then we can have such a nice time for a couple of weeks, and then it's starting to get ready for school again, and that routine is broke again, and it'll take a week to settle again. And I'm aware of this, with Miriam, if she's having trouble in school, she doesn't voice it, she doesn't tell you. She gets very angry, but internalizes everything inside until it explodes, and then it explodes in violent behavior. No one understands her, just things like that. And it's knowing what triggers.
Knowing what triggers, but also some of the things that you've mentioned, culturally, we are put in a certain category, especially with attachment disorder, because they imagine that we relocate from our countries to here. We are always getting detached from our families and everybody else that we know. We come into a culture that is totally different. Somebody just sent a comment. I don't know, Rachel, if you can look at it for me, please, in the comments box. We are then totally detached from those environments, and we have to start again.
Yeah.
So when we are like the first generation of arrival here, we are categorized different. Unfortunately, our children then, who we give birth here, are always looked at according to family history. And then they're put in that category according to family history. And that leads on to the delay in allocation of social workers, giving diagnosis, starting school plans, and supporting people the way that they should be supported. And then we've got an issue as well with systemic racism as well, because the system looks at it differently. You've ended up getting, Rosie diagnosed privately.
But see, we did have a lot of, I would say, system racism, because it was all, well, she's living in a white background. And I said, well, no, actually, I have a lot of mixed race family. And when Miriam first I keep saying her name and I really shouldn't, but when she first came to live with me, I found out all about Miriam's culture, everything that I needed to do as if she was my own child, because I had done that with my own child. I went everywhere. I learned how to do her hair, everything, because to me, that's what a mum does. It doesn't matter whether you're black, whether you're white. To me, you should just be there for the child. But we did have a lot, and I had a lot of people saying to me, it's, you live in a white background, she's never going to do well. And I was like, no, but we also had that from birth, mum and dad, that it was
and that's what I was going to ask Trish, because you always had this blockage from the birth mum and dad, because you were adopting Rosie. Yeah. And obviously you pushed for her to get a diagnosis via private settings. She's obviously always in a white kind of environment. And I know Rosie very well, because as I said, I've met her so many times. Yeah. When she sees a black person, she's amazingly excited.
Yeah, she's really funny.
She's amazingly excited. Oh, someone who looks like me. How do those comments, because she does understand those comments, she internalizes those comments, because children who are autistic, they're very good at internalizing things. They don't know how to externalize those things in a meaningful way, so they end up externalizing them either violently or aggressively. How does she actually manage those comments that people make? And the other question as well, how did you go past the blockage of her parents?
Well, when Miriam when she was really young and lived with me, and it was always brought up by school, it was brought up by everybody, oh, who's this? Is this your granddaughter? Is it your friend's child? And I'd be like, no, she's my child. She's, that's just it. It's nobody else's business. We had it with a neighbour ask me, oh, who's she to you? And because one comment was actually from a black couple, a mixed race couple, actually, a black husband and a white wife, and they said, well, she's too black to be your daughter. And I was sort of like, well, how would you know? You don't know anything. And I just walk away from things like that. And then we come home, me and Miriam, as she was so young, and we discussed about colours and about races and about things in ways that she could understand. So it was more picture-wise with Miriam, to show that people are all different colours.
Wow. And someone just said here in the comments, Trish, you're amazing, Trish. Some schools are so good with encouraging and supporting parents to get a diagnosis. The problem is usually the parents who refuse to have their children diagnosed, especially for children with high functioning autism. So majority of us,
a lot of people don't want to admit that their children have things wrong with them. They don't want to be under that umbrella, that stigma. I personally think everybody should get this diagnosis. If you think your child has autism or is struggling, then there is help to be found. There really is. And if you don't get it, then you're failing your child, because they won't get on in a mainstream senior school properly. But if the school, like I have another daughter who has fetal alcohol syndrome, and I'm now looking 2 years ahead into what mainstream schools she can go in, because they need to support her. And if it's not the right support, and that's what we done with Miriam as well, I made sure I went round and we looked. Miriam still got to choose, because, you know, it's got to be her decision, but she got to choose a special needs school.
I think the biggest problem with us, it's just understanding that autism is now a spectrum. In the past, it used to just be one word as Asperger's. We've taken that away. So it is a spectrum from actually being, you know, mild, you know, to severe autism. And
I do think a lot of people think of autism as these children with no voices and
non-verbal,
non-verbal, and the more extreme, you know, and that's how autism is pictured. And I think loads needs to be done to change people's minds. It's harder if you've got a child that is high functioning. That is the hardest part, and they are just left.
Absolutely. And this is why I actually invited you, Trish, today, because when I met Rosie for the first time as a professional, after speaking to Rosie, I realized that she's actually on the spectrum. And I remember asking you, but if you met her, you know, smartly dressed in her uniform or smartly dressed in her sports stuff going for a jog, you will never know that she's autistic. No. And the other reason I invited you is because in you know, equality and diversity, we have this issue about intersectionality. So Rosie is a Black child living in a white community because you're her adoptive parent, but she also has autism, which is a disability under intersectionality. So really she falls into, you know, two circles of EDI, very similar to our children who are mixed race, because they fall into those circles. So they struggle with the system, and then they also struggle with the society around them. And we've had, you know, majority of them actually saying, I don't want to go back to school at all.
We did have that for quite a while as well.
When it comes to that with Rosie, and, you know, I don't want to go back to school because, of course, she cannot problem solve. There's a situation at school. She doesn't want to talk about it. She doesn't want to problem solve. How do you go forward with that?
So I have a really good relationship with the school. Anything that goes on in the school will ring me, mostly on a daily basis, or we have a book that they write on, but the book has had to stop because Miriam was reading it and didn't like it. She was like, you're discussing me and you don't need to be, because she's older now and she needs to be, you know, I want my own little bit of privacy, which is fine. But we had a one-to-one. I actually fought with the council for 2.5 years before Miriam went to senior school, even though it's a special needs school, for a one-to-one for her. I would only agree for her to go to school with the one-to-one, because Miriam gets very, very distracted by the slightest little things and just will walk off, and she's not afraid. It's like, well, you know, I'm fine. If I die, I die. And it's everything's very, very black and white. There's no in between. So it was building that relationship with the school and being able to say to them, look, I want to know. I want to know anything that happens with her. Miriam has a really hard time apologising. Because if she believes something is true, then, as I say, it's very, very black and white, and she's not going to back down. And I honestly believe...
Hold on, Trish. And for parents, that's where our children end up being diagnosed with complex behavior disorder, instead of them being on a spectrum, because a child on a spectrum, their way is always right.
Yes.
Because they don't have a way of, they don't understand pros and cons.
No.
So you cannot try to explain to them that they are wrong in any way.
No.
You can get other ways of explaining that to them about how something can be done differently.
Yeah.
So, of course, Trish, from where I come from, some of these children are in schools And because we still use caning as a corporal punishment, these are children who are beaten in school over and over because they cannot retain information. They cannot weigh pros and cons. And this is what you're defining with Miriam. And sometimes because of our culture sensitivity as well, we fall trap of that. And we just say, no, my child is just a bad child. And I've seen some parents actually taking back children to Africa so that they can teach them a lesson.
Yeah, and it's also in, I have had that at my child's a bad child, and you know I should just get on with it. But no, it is completely, all cultures are different. They really are, and I do believe.
Sorry about that, Trish.
Okay, I do believe that, you know, everyone's culture's different, and how you deal with your child, but accepting that this, you know, your child has autism is massive, but it's the best thing you can do for your child, because then they get the help they need. Wow. The school has to adjust to your child. You know, it's not like if they're in a mainstream school and they lash out and do something, they're expelled or they're suspended. It's not like that in a special needs school, because they have to adjust to your child. And
so they adjust to your child's needs.
They adjust to your child's needs, but your needs in your EHCP plan, you can see. I actually went on IPSI law training for an EHCP plan, because our first EHCP plan was awful. It was all, Miriam could benefit from this, which doesn't mean that she's going to get help.
Talking about HCP plans, we have a session on that as well, Trish, and I'll probably invite you for, you know, to help us with some training.
Yeah.
Or we will just put that on the side, but HCP plans, they are so generic. Someone has actually sent me a child's HCP plan, and it had another child's name into it. Very clear that someone who wrote it had just copied and pasted.
Yeah, but I've got one of them as well. I kept that
going back to the other issue that I asked, of course, you then adopted Rosie.
Yeah.
Where did the parents then, because I know at one time they were blocking the diagnosis of autism because, of course, of, you know, stigma, and they didn't want their child to be identified as autistic. How did that come to an end?
It come to an end actually before our adoption, because it come to blows with me and Dad.
Oh dear.
Where I went to pick Miriam up from a contact centre, and he'd absolutely lost it because she was now wearing glasses. And he told me, you white people, Miriam's eyesight is awful. Her eyesight is awful. So that was part of, let's get all this done before we go for any diagnosis. And Dad absolutely caused murder and said, I'm not having it. He kept promising her things and saying, it's just you white people are making her out to be worse than what she is. And I just pulled him on it. I just said, excuse me, but no, doesn't matter whether I'm white, I'm purple, or anything. I'm here supporting your daughter, and I want to get her the help. We don't have mental health. None of my children have mental health. And I didn't say she had mental health. I said she had autism and has a special way of learning.
Wow. Wow. So for those who are just joining us, I can see a few people are joining us. We are just trying to talk about culture sensitivity and the diagnosis of autism. And you might be wondering why Trish is here, but Trish is somebody who adopted a black child. And for the purposes of today, we are calling her Rosie. And Trish had a delay in diagnosing this young lady because of two things: the system and how it saw this girl's behavior, but also the parents of this girl and how they saw the diagnosis of autism. So we are really just sharing, because in the long run, Trish had to actually diagnose this young lady privately and did a lot of trainings to be able to meet the needs of this young lady. I know this young lady. And when you see her for the very first time, you might think that she's just a normal child. But when you're professional and you talk to her, you will just know that she's on the spectrum. So go ahead, Trish.
Yeah, so it was just me actually saying to Dad, no, I'm sick of being accused of putting labels on your child when I'm only trying to help her. And we come to blows. We had massive arguments. I was no longer allowed to go and pick her up from contact. And I said, I'm just going to carry on doing the best for your child, and that's all there is to it. And we never spoke again for months and months and months. And then just before her last contact, Dad actually said to me, thank you.
Wow.
Because she's a different child.
Amazing.
And it was like heartbreaking.
Amazing. So Trish, Rosie is now 13, isn't she?
She's 13, yeah.
In terms of that journey that you had with her from early childhood to where she is now, how has it helped in terms of outcomes?
In terms of outcomes, she will be able to achieve anything she wants because her education is put into the way she can learn. She learns at a really, she's like so clever. She's in all the top sets, but work was adjusted to what she needed. There is still a lot of social anxiety. There's a lot of Rosie can struggle really bad with social anxiety. She doesn't really like people. Again, we know how she met you. She shouts to your eye, where are you from? And we like goat because that's
she's learned to like me now.
Yeah,
she always waves at me and gives me hugs.
Yeah, it takes a lot. It takes a lot for her to trust people, and she tends to, if we go anywhere, she's like my shadow. You know, we can't move anywhere without her. If I go anywhere, she's like, where are you going? What are you doing? And Miriam has learned behaviour. So she knows how to answer people and exactly what they want to hear. Does she understand what she's saying? No. But she knows how to do it. She knows how to work the doctors, everything. But it's all learned behaviour. It's so clever.
Yeah.
But knowing the true Rosie, you know that it's all a learned behaviour. It's things she picks up and thinks, well, how can I use that to me? And to be fair, it's really, really clever.
And that's where autism mirrors, you know,
Yes.
complex behavior disorders. And a lot of children with autism then end up being diagnosed with a personality disorder in future as they are teenagers.
Because they haven't been properly diagnosed as a child.
Absolutely, absolutely. Just one question before we finish, Trish, on your side, and people can ask questions because I can see hands up already. What training was that you mentioned on the HCPs?
IPSI Law. So IPSI Law is a company that comes out and give training to loads of us.
Okay.
And it was telling us what is legal and what isn't legal on an EHCP plan. And honest to God, it's mind blowing.
I'll get some details from you because I think we can fund it for MBS so they can come over and do a Zoom session for us.
It's so useful.
Oh, amazing. I think we'll get some details from you on that. I've got Galaxy with a hand up. Galaxy S21.
Hi, hello. My name is Catherine. I live in Derby.
Hi, Catherine.
Hi, Catherine.
Millie invited me over. Going through quite a lot of things. I have 2 boys diagnosed with autism. I'm diagnosed myself. You wouldn't know that.
No.
But to me, this is close to my heart before leukemia now with my son. One of my boys has leukemia at the moment. What is mind bubbling? It's us as BAME people. I've lived in Derby now for 13 years. That's how old my oldest is. And I've tried to bring people along saying, please tap into, in Derby, we have what the charity called Umbrella. It supports parents with children on pathway to autism, on pathway to other diagnoses and disabilities. Most people, the problem, and which I sit on one of their voice for parents on their panel, like we voice out what other parents are struggling with that they cannot air out, saying, oh, this is what the problem is. Derby City is a diverse community. You have Asian, Polish, name it, we're all there. The problem is, first of all, barrier with language. Language is a very big thing. And you find because people don't understand, some of it is just yes, 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 or it is because I don't know what you're saying. I'm not going to acknowledge what it is you're saying about my child.
Yeah.
It took a lot for me to learn, but quite quickly, luckily with my older one, I was able to understand and see his struggles when he was about 7. I've been told from when he was 3, but I was like, one, I don't know what autism is until I know what that is. I'm not going to diagnose. We've changed schools when he was 6, and most of it was not his fault, but I didn't realize. It's like when you have a routine, it's even harder to get the diagnosis because you're used to, when we get in, jackets here, shoes here, that goes there, so they know that. It was hard for me to pick that, but it was when we're doing homework that I realized I've just explained something to you. Why don't you get it? And then I realized, you know what? He, being his age back then, I've copied homework of, most Africans will know this, of blackboards, and gone home and I've been asked, can you read your homework? I'm like, I can't read a single thing because you're just copying things off the board and you don't realize, you didn't understand what you're writing. You're just writing to be able to get home. So, and those are the things, the frustration I have with most of our BAME people, when you say to them, look, autism is not a curse. Look at all these successful companies. Behind them, most of them have autistic people. Google, Apple, all those big names. Look at all these big names, whoever, all the ones who have money now.
Most geniuses.
If you looked into them, most of them are autistic. And when you tell people that, it's mind blowing. The other thing, I'm sorry, I'm all over the place, but the other thing I found is when I've said to people, oh, my children are autistic. No, they'll outgrow it. I'm like, no, you don't outgrow it. You do not outgrow autism. It's you learn to adjust as you get older. And you know, okay, I don't like that. I have an option of saying, I will not do that. A child does not have that option of saying, I will not do that. They have to do to get through. And this is a problem we have. We need to stop saying they'll get through it. Myself, I know I'm not, many people will invite me to so many things. I have social anxiety. Me picking up my children at school, that is like as if I've been put up on a stage.
Yeah.
As stupid as it may sound, in my head, I start having those anxieties thinking, oh my God, now I have to go to school. I have to face all these parents. I have to smile and say hi. It's a lot. That's how some of our children are like. But because I know how it feels, I'm able to relate that with my boys. Now, for a parent, if you're not autistic and you've not taken the time to understand what autism is, the other causes most people are failing. You get the diagnosis, you sit back, get yourself informed. I don't care how many times you have to learn about sensory needs. I don't care how many times you have to learn about communication. Those are mainly the key ones most of the time that autistic people struggle with.
Yeah. Totally. As I said before, no child is the same. So
exactly.
Even though my daughter goes to a special needs school, it didn't mean they met every one of her needs. And it was me sitting with an EHCP plan and saying, actually, no, I don't agree with that. And I sent our EHCP plan back 10 times with it all crossed out and what I suggested. And in the end, the council just really got a gob on with me and gave me what I wanted.
And I like that. And that's what we should do as parents, because
Yeah.
like I said, these HCP plans are just generic. They'll
They are.
copy and paste. And is it Catherine from Derby? It's the name
Yes.
Catherine. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Just like what Catherine said, it's the language. So I'm from Uganda, and
Yeah.
I qualified as a nurse in 2002. Living in Uganda as a child and a student, I'd never had the word autism. So the language that is being used needs to be explained to the parents. The other thing about time spent, Catherine, you're a lucky mother because you have so much time to spend with your your children. I go to some families to support them, and if they are together, husband and wife, when one is coming in for night, for a day shift, another one is leaving for a night shift, and the one who worked last night is asleep. So we don't have the luxury of having a grandmother here or an auntie to drop your children off. So in terms of time spent with our children, it's very, very limited. So a lot of people have that as an excuse not to understand the needs of their children. And going back to Trish, you just shared, I know that Rosie sometimes goes to your mom, and then she's picked up by somebody else. So you get a bit of respite, which our people don't get. I'm coming back to you, Catherine, and I'm echoing the training needs and the anxiety of parents being in a social environment when their children are presenting that. And some of the parents here in our past sessions actually shared some of the names people call their children because of their response to sensory needs. We know that our children like to echo in higher pitches. They'll be rocking, they'll be jumping, they'll be running. The names that are being called these children by our own community members. Religious leaders telling people your child is cursed, or they've got demons, or your ancestors did so and so, that's why you've come out this way. So there's a lot of education that we need to do for this first generation before we even reach to the next generation in terms of autism and learning disabilities and mental illness. But it's also a systems issue, because you mentioned Umbrella as an organization, and I'm just trying to understand whether it's a BAME organization or it's a white organization, because then people of my color might feel comfortable coming to you, Catherine, because you might understand their journey better and explain things better to them compared to somebody else or who is not of their background. And we have that issue because historically, we know that healthcare services have used us as guinea pigs for research. And people are very worried. We remember COVID. I used to do sessions here on COVID, and people are very worried about the job. They asked so many questions. So it always goes back into that. The fact that, a Black woman is 4 times more likely to die while in labor in the UK, where we've got NHS. In Uganda, where I come from, it's payment from your pocket. So it depends on how things go for you. Maternal death is high. But there's a lot of history that people are worried about when it comes to these things. So days like this, times like this, to share where we are all the same and, trying to have this as a safe space totally works a lot for us. And it's a starting journey. We've been doing this for a while, and we've got a different topic every other week. Catherine, you were saying something.
Yeah, I'm going to surprise you. I'm a single mom, raising 2 autistic boys, very different. My older one is in a special school now. I've been told we have to learn to believe what we believe for our children. I've managed to write a I'm going into this so people really understand. I don't have anyone to help me. My son has leukemia for the last 8 months. It's only been me. I've been forced to take his brother to foster carers. Understand? Because the community, funny enough, all the time, fellow Black people, all the time, oh, your child is like this, oh, your child is like this. And these are very people working in autism, shockingly, Black people. You understand? Now, I am a Ugandan. Don't be fooled by the looks. I am a Ugandan, born and bred in Uganda. Yeah. I hear where you're coming from and I understand what you're saying. There's so many Ugandans in Derby some who have appreciated, and other cultures, I do not discriminate. Umbrella is a charity. Yeah. It's an inclusive charity. It does not differentiate or anything. The problem is with me, I would have been, they've asked me so many times, could you please come and work for us? Could you please come and work for us? I would have worked with them. But the issue is I have 2 autistic children. I am autistic myself.
And you would be amazing for people of color who need to relate with you, because there is nothing that moves somebody like telling your personal story. And somebody just said here in the comments box, what strong mothers you both are, both Trish and Catherine, and thank you for sharing. And someone said, we as Africans do not have so many words to explain feelings in different languages sometimes. Go on, Catherine.
Yeah, I was going to say, to me, I speak to people born and bred here, Pakistani, who don't understand this. I've spoken to Tanzanians, to fellow Ugandan. I don't care who I find, as long as I'm being told they're struggling with their child, or I've seen that kind of behavior and I've said, look, I have a feeling your child might be on the spectrum. And they're like, no. Then they come back to me a year later saying, oh, you know what? School is saying this, you are saying this other organization. I'm like, no, yeah, it's okay. Let's go and do this. If you want, I'll come to meetings with you. I don't speak their language. Some people speak the most of, as broken as you could understand English, but I try and make out what they're saying and then go and then explain, no, that's what she means, or explain back saying, oh, no, that's what they're asking you. Let's answer it this way. Those who have agreed to come on board with this have benefited from it. They're learning that, no, if school is calling me saying your child is messing up and you've told school several times you're struggling, and now they've actually seen the behavior, why are they calling you to come and take him home? He's meant to be in school. They said they'll cope. Let them cope. Let them then call local authorities and tell them, look, we can't cope with this person's child. Can we do this? I know a friend whose child is now 5. I've seen the child. I've known this friend before even the child was conceived. Yeah. So when the next time I see the child, he was 3, and I could immediately tell he's on the spectrum. Mom was shocked. We didn't speak a year after that. Then later on, she's like, look, I'm struggling. I asked her, have you spoke to this one? Have you spoke to that person? Have you spoke to that person? He says, no. I said, look, okay, it's not easy. We're at war. That's what I told her. We are at war. Every single stage, diagnosis, war, EHP, war, school, war.
Allocation of social workers is the biggest thing.
You're all the time at war. And I said to her, brace yourself. We'll get there. You'll be the one next time saying to the next person, you know what? Do this, and do this. And she's surprised now. We're a year into this, and she's telling other people, no, go to this charity to be able to support you. I've been there. They'll come and sit with you in school. And I think what schools are mainly scared of, bring another person with authority. Doesn't matter which other organization they're coming from. They'll sit and listen. They will sit and listen.
Wonderful. Just a quick question. Actually, this person has piqued my mind. So it's very traumatizing for a parent to be told their child has something different, because you give birth to this baby and you already have this journey of them, going to school, from school, going to high school, university, getting married. You just draw this plan in your mind for somebody to divert and say, this is how it is. I remember the session we had in summertime, a parent who broke down and cried and said the first time she was told that, she cried and walked out of the pediatrician's office. And that is how people react to trauma, because it's a journey. You have to filter that information. You have to accept it or refuse it. And most of the time we refuse it, especially for people who are prayerful. They want to refuse it because they've got their way of, dealing with these things. They want to believe it's not happening at that moment in time. So sometimes, like what you've described, Catherine, a parent who will not speak to you for months or years, they are going through the acceptance journey. They want to accept this and be able to create coping mechanisms, with it. And, in our organization, like Millie said, we support all kinds of people as long as they're under the BAME umbrella. And again, we did categorize certain things because we find people of Black African, background. We reject it very much. And we are more on the Christian side compared to the scientific side of things. But this person's question is, what advice would you ladies give a mother who finds out that their child is on the spectrum? How do they cope? How should they cope? There's a second part to it, but it's just random. Or do you ever take a break to take care of yourselves? Hi, Trish, you've put your hand up first.
Yeah, me personally, I would say there's never a time that you can stop learning and fighting for your children. Never. It's find out in your area where you live what type of training. Like, for instance, in Liverpool, there's one called the Isabella Trust. You pay £5 to do a course on autism, on fetal alcohol syndrome. They're really, really informative. They're really, really good. Get to know in your community as well. There's, as the lady was saying, she's got Umbrella. We have in Kirby Knowsley Parent Care of Voice. In Liverpool, there's Live Pack. There's different ones, and there's also your council websites with your local offer.
That's right.
And that is everywhere, your local offer. And most of the things on local offer, you'll probably look at it and think, that doesn't suit my child. That's not going to meet our needs. But then you can get a social worker's assessment. Now, getting a social worker is a hard thing, and keeping a social worker is a hard thing. But he who shouts loudest gets to work more. And it sounds horrible, but you have to. And you have to advocate for your children all the time. And realise that your children has autism is not your fault. It's not down to your genetics. It's not down to you as a parent. It doesn't reflect on you as a parent. What reflects on you is how much you're going to fight for your child for them to be whatever they want to be. I believe my daughter can achieve anything in life. Just need to adapt things slightly sometimes.
Amazing. Somebody asked something. Catherine, were you coming in there, or should we go to the next
I
question?
was going to say, it has been a shock to me on every single thing. When my son got diagnosed, I think you go into grieving mode, or when you see that on that path, you go into grieving mode. You reflect back, what did I do? What did I miss? What's going
frozen.
on?
Yeah.
You go.
Can everyone else hear me?
Okay.
You froze, Catherine. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say it's okay. It's okay. We're going to grieving mode.
Yeah.
And you start reflecting on from birth to where you are with the child, and that's okay. That's okay. For both of my boys, been the diagnoses have come out at different stages, and that's okay. That's okay. But each time you grieve, you cry, you think, what did I miss? What have I done wrong? But it's not your fault.
No.
And you need to cry to let it out. But try as much as possible to go to support groups around you, because I can tell you something, but you might find another parent who has the exact behavior with your child, but it doesn't mean what they're able to sort out. You work for you. It's most of the time try and error. Try and see what works, or how can you change it a bit to then suit your child.
The best advice I was ever given was go to a coffee morning for parents with children with autism, because you sit and you talk about how your child thinks, and you'll think, I've done everything, and then another parent will come in and say, well, I've done this. You think, I can try that. That might be something that will work. And it is, listening to other parents is the best thing you can do because they live the life. Listening to a specialist that doesn't live with a child with autism is not great. It's definitely not. So yeah, I totally agree with you on that.
Mm.
We lost everybody.
Oh, is it?
Hi, Trish. I think Justina has disconnected.
Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
she's on mute. Thank you so much, Trish and Catherine, for sharing. That was so good to hear,
No
because at
problem.
least it's coming from people that have experiences. Sorry, I think the network is going off. Hello.
Hello, can hear you.
Oh,
I
thank
can
you. I
hear
thought
you.
the network was going off on my side too. From what Catherine has said and Trish, I can actually relate. I've shared my experience so many times on this platform, but every time I share it, I remember so many things that I've actually done, and I feel so proud of myself. But it all came from accepting. So, ladies and gentlemen, I know we have many, yeah. The first thing is to accept, because once you accept, that's the only time you can look out for help. And like Catherine said, it's not the end of the world. Like, there's so many things you can actually do once you're aware, once you have all this information. I've actually been to so many coffee mornings. I can relate with Trish. And the interesting part with that, it's people with similar problems. So when you're in there, there's no one judging you. You can talk about anything openly without having anyone say anything otherwise. Everyone is ready to learn from one another. So it's really, really, really good for us to attend those coffee mornings. There's also trainings. Again, personally, I've invested in a lot of trainings. Now, these trainings, I did them because I wanted to know more of how I can support my child. Because like everyone is saying, the language that is used in diagnosing our children, it can be complex. I remember one time I really freaked out. My husband can witness this. We went to see a pediatrician, and within less than half an hour, the amount of information he wrote about my child, I could not contemplate that information. Like, I was thinking, no way. Like, how can someone see my child for like 10 minutes and write a report? And the language that was used in that report, first of all, I was using Google to find out most of those words, what they mean. So everything I was reading, because I was still in denial, I was traumatized. So in me, there was that battle. There is always that inner battle as a parent, especially when you haven't come to terms with it. But once you come to terms with it, there's actually help. There's so many things you can achieve. There's so many people you get to meet with all sorts of information. Now, like Trish, the wonderful things you're saying about Rose, I'm like, wow. So once my child is 13, because Ethan is only 9, I'm always worried thinking, oh God, so what's going to happen in that teenage stage? So I've already done a training on teenagers, so I can know if that time comes, how am I going to deal with the teenage stage? So the trainings are really spot on. So thank you so much, ladies, for sharing. I think Esther has her hand up. So I'll give room to Esther. Thank you.
I just wanted to ask, because I've got a child I'm going to be seeing this week who's I'm thinking is almost could be on the spectrum. So I just wanted to understand from the parents who've been sharing, what would you have wanted professionals to sort of do for you? Because I know what Millie you've said, the pediatrician only saw your child for 10 minutes. I'm only going to see this young child for about half an hour because of time constraints. I couldn't spend a whole day with this child. And then I'm only going to spend about another hour with the parents who don't speak English. So I'm going to have to, again, organize a translator. So I'm just wanting to pick the parents' brains to understand what would they like to see beyond the school teachers, but those are the professionals who come in to see their child, to talk to them. What would you like us to see to sort of show that we are sensitive, we are hearing you? What would you like for us to do? And just bearing in mind that sometimes when I write my reports, it's best on a snapshot of the child. And I always tell parents they can always come back to me if they feel I haven't represented what they said properly. I always leave the door open for them, that they could always call me or email me if they feel that that report is not a good reflection of their child. But I'm just, because I want to learn to make sure I never ever make a parent feel the way you have felt.
So Esther, where are you on the pathway? Social worker, psychologist, where are you?
I'm an educational psychologist.
Educational psychologist, okay. Any parents?
Can I answer that, Justine?
Yeah.
On my opinion, when we've gone to see education psychologists, when we've gone to see pediatricians, it's not having to tell your story 1,000 times to every different one, because it gets passed on that much, and you feel like you're literally banging your head against a brick wall because you're repeating, and you're thinking, me personally, I go to a psychologist and they say, right, you tell me about your daughter. And I'll say, well, you tell me what you know first, because to me, you should always know about my child before I come to see you. You have a report, because you don't get to see a psychologist or a pediatrician without reports being sent to them first. And the amount of specialists that we've seen that have never read up on my daughter on anything, and I'm having to tell my story over and over and over again, and that feels like nobody's listening.
Okay,
I
thank you.
would like to go to a professional that actually goes, well, you know, I know your daughter does this, can you tell me about that? That I know they've read the report on my child.
Okay, thanks, Trish. We've got Esther too. If you can unmute. There's a second Esther with a hand up.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I just want to say to that professional, listen to the parent. They know their child best. To you, this is a case. To them, this is their child. So listen to the parent, what they go through, what they say about their child, and take these details into account. Much as you're a professional, I think the parent is the professional for this child. So work together to formulate what plan you want to do for this child.
Thank you, Esther. We've got Anne. You had your hand up.
Yeah, I would add a little to that. I also agree that the professional will have to listen to the parent. And is it Trish who said that most of the time I work with people with autistic, and I've worked with them for years. And it happens when you go for appointments, the doctor will ask the autistic person, how are you? This person is on non-verbal. And you ask yourself, you have the computer in front of you, what have you read? So they always want to hear what you have, not telling you what they have. So we, as parents, we have to, I'll go back to spending the time to know and spending money or time to learn about this diagnosis. It comes like as a shock, yes, but then we have to also know so that when we sit in front of these professionals, they won't just push anything that they feel like pushing on us.
Okay, thank you, Anne. We've got Catherine again.
Yeah, I was going to say, I hear where is it Trish is coming from, but then again, you have to remember, I have friends who've had school has said we don't see anything. Speech and language say the child is fine. Now the pediatric wants to know what it is about your child that everyone else, because if they then tell you, most of the time you'll probably end up angry, because I found out on my younger son's assessment, school was saying, no, he's fine. He is a bright boy, very, very intelligent, but he struggles socially. And to the extent he self-harms, not self-harming, piercing himself or anything, but slapping his head or that kind of self-harming. Now, I've spoken to school at the time and they're like, no, there's nothing. So nurses have come out to see him. They've recommended we go to the pediatric, sent the letter for them to fill out. They were kind of hesitant to fill out the letters. So I said to them, look, this is the school nurse has been to me. They live closer to me, so they've just dropped off the forms. This is why I'm giving you the forms. So anyway, they fill out the forms. Now I go to the pediatric. I say what I need to say and what I'm struggling with at home. Remember, children tend to hold things in. How they present at school is not how they present at home. Most of the time, home is their safe place. So they will bring everything they've been holding in from school home. So we see the ugly side most of the time. It's only if it's got to that, when the bottle is really full, that it will explode in school. But most of the time, they're holding in until they come home, and then everything is spilled out. Now, after saying what I need to say, the pediatric says, "Do you know that your son self-harms?" And I'm like, "What?" Now, this is the same school that was saying, "No, he's fine. There's nothing wrong with him. I've not been told he's self-harming." So, although I understand where you're coming from, Trish, but also the other side is, if you don't give your side of the story, sometimes I've had my older son's pediatric saying, "Look, most of the time school will say what they want to say, but when I need to hear what you're seeing and what you're saying, and then go and make that observation in school for us to come to that conclusion."
Wow.
And sometimes, yeah, it might be like a pain, you having to explain these things over and over and over again. But sometimes between the time probably the school have sent the report and the time you've seen the pediatric, maybe something new has cropped up.
Wow. Thank you, Catherine. This goes back to what you mentioned about being at a battle. It just feels like parents are at that front line all the time, now and again. But two things that I've picked up from Esther, just a bit of feedback from what you wanted. I think people want professionals to be open and honest. I know that for the long time that I've worked in NHS, we tend to walk on eggshells around racial things, culture sensitivity, and we want to cover them up. So be open and honest to these people. You mentioned that you're going to visit them, but you need an interpreter. I don't think that an interpreter for the first time will work, just the one. So I think you need to see them another time to allow that person to get used to the interpreter that you're using, to feel comfortable to share, because autism, learning disability, and mental illness are very sensitive topics from people of a different background. Innocent, you've got your hand up.
Hi, Justine and
Oh,
everyone.
hello, it's you.
Of course, it's me. I thought I would give Esther my view on what to expect from, especially Black African parents as a teacher, because I have to fill in a lot of those forms as well for the education psychologists. So there's usually this one teacher who gets that child, and that teacher will always write exactly what he sees in the child that the parents see. I know it's difficult for me to explain, but there's always that one teacher who gets the child. And I think that's where that teacher makes the huge difference, because what the parents see and what the teacher sees. I say this because I do this all the time. I have a connection with children who have that need, and straight away you'll pick up on it. And if it's a very good teacher, straight away they'll call the parents. God willing, the parents are willing to listen, and they're not going to feel their child is being picked on. But most of the time, Black parents are going to feel their child is being picked on.
Yeah, Innocent, sorry, I'm going to cut you through. I want you to explain to us, as a teacher for all this time in London, how does it feel giving that feedback to a parent who thinks it's negative feedback? Do you feel safe? Do you feel comfortable to say?
It is difficult sometimes, and this is where the whole system goes wrong, because the parent is going to be reactive. So either most of the time I will have built a relationship. You have to invest the time in building a relationship with a parent. And then it starts off with, your child is struggling with this. And then the parents will say, yes, I know, she forgets things quickly. She doesn't socialize. Then, it takes maybe about 2 or 3 months. You keep that conversation very light before you hit in. And then you say, have you thought about this? Usually, because I've dealt with so many children who are autistic, then I'm going to say, I can help here. There's a lot of information. I know it's very difficult for us Black parents to actually comprehend what autism is, but there's a lot of support if you're willing. Well, then you leave it at that. If the parent is willing, but like most of you are saying, a year later, they might come and say, actually, Miss Mutumba, I think what you said, can we now go back? Then that's when I have to go to the Senko and say, okay, now this is going to work for this child because the parents are willing to engage. But half of the time, the school really won't say, let's have your child diagnosed with autism, because they know the parents are going to be reactive. So I would encourage the parents. I think I heard it from Trish when you said, if you have a good relationship with the school, they will give you everything that you need. They will call you, they will engage with you all the time. So it always starts with having that good relationship with the school. And always look out for that teacher that your child thinks is their favorite teacher. There's always a teacher who gets your child. It doesn't matter what school they're in. That's the parent that is going to be a voice for you when they're filling in the forms for the educational psychologist or, for the EHCP plan. So, but again, like I said, our Black parents are very difficult. I can't say that enough.
Okay, I might have to drag you back here one time, Innocent, because I know you're quite useful in that area, being a teacher. Millie, you've got your hand up.
Hi everyone. Sorry, I don't know if my video is back on.
Yeah, it would be lovely to see your face, Mrs. Chimba.
Okay. Can you hear me, Justina?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so what I wanted to say to Esther, for any professional really, so if you go into a family's home, what I would expect, I would want to know why you are here and what I should expect from you. Because a lot of times, again, from Black backgrounds, when a professional comes, we think we are in trouble. Like, are they coming to pick on the negative things? Like, so many times when a professional is coming out, again, you'd want to make everywhere spotless, but sometimes this family is struggling. So all you want to know, what is the professional coming for and what should I expect from you? Because I want to know if you're, for example, an educational psychologist, what should I expect from you if you're going to see my child in school? What should I look out for? So I am involved in the whole process, because sometimes on my journey with my son, even though the educational psychologist has gone to school and seen my child, done all these things, reports have been written, and then all I'm given is a report. But I would have wanted to be engaged on every stage of the process. In terms of social workers, again, I would ask for the same thing. If you're coming out to a family, identify to the family why you're there and what they should expect from you, like the outcomes. So that fear, because again, professionals, when they come out to families, especially to a family that hasn't come to terms with autism, there is that fear. But if you break it down, like, I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to help the child, because it's about the child. So yeah, I would want it to be centered to the child, but the parents be involved in everything so that we know what's happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Millie. I love this safe space. It's every 2 weeks. It's only 2 hours, but we tend to always go past. So we literally have 20 minutes before we close this down, because we cannot go past 5:30. We have to finish as quickly as we can. I can see Catherine's hand up, so I'll come back to that as soon as, oh no, I think the person put their hand down. So Catherine, if you can just quickly go through what you're going to say, and then we sum up.
Yeah, I was going to say what Millie has just said about when you have someone professional coming to your house, and this is the mistake most parents do. You know your child is breaking screens all over the house, your child messes up the house, so you hear the professional is coming. You tidy up the house quite quickly. You're telling them your child kicks off, throws this and throws that. When they come in, they're thinking, no, it doesn't look like that. So what you're saying does not match what has exactly happened that morning. You're struggling, but you're trying to show everyone. And to me, this is why I've come out to that. I don't care, even if you walked past me and my child was kicking off, you just keep looking and walking. Whatever you say, I don't care, because we need to stop caring what society thinks. This is your child. If they need to have a meltdown, they need to have that meltdown. And this is how we need to educate society as well, because most of the time you're thinking, oh, I don't want to go to these people's home, because if my child has a meltdown because they don't like that loud noise or they don't like that something, you're not actually allowing them be a part of society, or excluding them. We need them included. And also to do with Esther, when you're speaking with parents, say to them, look, I want us to work together. It's not a one-way street, because if the parent feels they're included on every step of the journey, then they feel like, okay, yeah, I think this can work. I think what they're saying, because you will have many times differences, but they'll be very minute if you're working together.
Mm-hmm. And, I hope that really helps Esther as a professional, because people from my background, by the way, Esther, we are very, very sensitive when it comes to safeguarding issues. And this is because the system has not properly understood the differences in our cultural perspective and how we do certain things. I have been once called to a family, and the parent was really, really anxious because she said to me, oh, the social worker came to assess my son, but she asked to look into the fridge. And my question was, what do you think they were looking for? Maybe they're worried that I'm not feeding them. So we are very, very sensitive when it comes to safeguarding issues. So be able to explain reasons as to why you're doing certain things, because certain things do really, really scare us. As I mentioned, we'll be closing down the safe space soon. I'm not sure if anybody else wants to make a comment or add, or Esther, you want to come back in if you've got what you have to say. Hi, Innocent, you can unmute.
Sorry, it's me again. Things just randomly come back to me. I think, Justine, also very important for Esther is to remember in Africa, and it's taken me a long time to actually comprehend this, we don't have words for feelings. So when you're asking a parent, is your child anxious? That word doesn't register that your child is anxious, because I'm thinking, Justine, like for us, I'm well, I'm not well.
Very few words to explain emotions. Yeah.
Yes. Or I like you, but I don't like you.
Yeah.
So we have very, very limited vocabulary for feelings. And even me as a parent, I am still on that learning journey of the various words for feelings. So that is really, really important. When you're from a white background, the words just come naturally. Oh, I'm feeling anxious. Oh, I'm feeling emotional, overwhelmed. All those words.
Because it's acceptable. It's acceptable.
Yes.
So we come from a background where anxiety, fear, depression should never be part of our journey.
No. Yeah.
And yeah, go on.
So I find that that's also a very difficult one for education psychologists who don't have that understanding that actually, I'm speaking to somebody from Africa, their vocabulary for feelings is limited, yet, if I'm going to do this diagnosis, I have got to understand how they are coping with these various vocabulary for feelings. And sometimes I think that's where it can go wrong, because the child might be anxious, but because the parent doesn't understand what anxiety consists of, then the parent is going to say, no, they're not anxious.
Mm-hmm.
And yet there are actually certain things they're doing home or in school that show very high levels of anxiety.
Okay.
But the parent hasn't comprehended it as anxiety.
Thank you. Thank you. Back to you, Esther.
Yeah, thank you for the feedback. It was quite good to hear. I'm actually also Black. I'm from Kenya, so I am quite. I understand and relate to what a lot of the parents are saying, and that's why I was asking, just so that I'm not sort of. I still have my roots, but sometimes you get into a profession and you sometimes the system, you kind of, without realizing, fall into
You
the system.
become part of the
You
system.
become part of the system because you're financially, you've got to fit in. You can't always be going outside. Otherwise, you then are always having, we're working late
Absolutely.
because you've done extra, where other people aren't doing extra. You're trying to do extra to kind of mitigate all the, because you're understanding, I'm understanding this family I'm going to see. They're not British, so I understand they don't have grandma and granddad here. So I understand that, but it's just but it's good to hear from the parents. It's really lovely. And I was just wondering, from your team, are you willing to sort of support research? Because at the minute, there's so much research out there for girls on the autism spectrum, but we don't have any from actually Black girls or ethnic minority. So I was wondering whether if I ever found somebody who's doing research, could they email to get to recruit children?
Absolutely. There's a team that we are working with on a piece of work with Liverpool John Moss. So we are happy to support research moving forward. Alice, you've got your hand up. Oh, am I frozen? Trish, can you hear me? Can you unmute, please? You've got your hand up. Yeah. You've got your hand up. Have you got something to say?
For me, sorry.
Yeah.
Was just to say about social workers, and as you know, I've worked with loads and loads of social workers right throughout my children, and they didn't even understand where we were saying before about Miriam's birth parents kept saying it's you white people, and it was just because they didn't understand actually what we were saying. They thought they were being blamed
for Rosie's behavior.
Yeah, and it's only because I kept a relationship with both parents and sort of met up with them and explained it in my way, because that was my choice to keep in touch with them. And it was, they didn't understand what was happening in where they're from. It's not known. You know, autism is not known. It's just you're a bad child or you're... And her parents explaining that to me sort of like relieved all the anger I had with them as well. Because I was sort of like, well, you know, why don't you want the best for your children? But it wasn't that they didn't want the best for her. It's that they didn't understand themselves and thought they were being blamed for something that they'd done, and they hadn't.
That's one of the other things I remember. One of the first sessions that we had, in terms of somebody, the question was, why do children get diagnosed with autism? The research is there, but some families actually do not have a background of autistic children, or even generations. They go back like 4 generations and there's nothing. Then somebody's diagnosed with autism, and the research there doesn't show anything because there's nothing linked. There's a lot linked to family history and background and genetics. But parents would then turn around and say, oh, and I don't drink, I don't smoke, I never use drugs. And you say, listen, the neurons in the brains of your child are not related to alcohol or cigarettes or smoking. Things have happened, and research does not show us. In a lens of research, we don't know why sometimes things happen. They are what they are. I remember during COVID, nobody knew where this COVID had come from, but that's another story for another day. Millie, you got your hand up as well, because we've got 10 minutes. And after Millie, we've got Innocent.
Thank you, Justina. I've just got a quick question for the professionals here. I know that children in care can have access to their care records once they're 18. So in terms of a child that has special needs, would those care records be available to parents?
They should be available to you the minute they're written. So through the SENCO, you should be requesting a report I've written. You should request your SENCO to forward it to you. so that you can read it before even the plan is written out.
Okay, thank you.
Because you are the next of kin to this, child. So you should, because personally as well, as a charity, if you do the information to share kind of, you could get that report. And I know I've normally got people's reports as MBS, as long as they've given consent as parents. Trish, I saw you shaking your head.
Yeah, I just want to say, it's based on when your child is in foster care, you have no say.
Oh,
right? So everything comes down. You have meetings with the schools and you have meetings with social workers, and you will agree, but it's always on a need to know basis. So there was things on my children's backgrounds that I would never have known, only I really pushed for it.
But if there is no social care involved, you're entitled to know anyway immediately if you want to, at least from NHS. Yeah.
And again, mine are adopted now, and I still am waiting for paperwork on both my children.
Wow.
And one's lived with me since she was 2, she's 13, and the other one's lived with me from birth, and I still haven't got background paperwork on them.
Okay. So I think it's a different story when they're in foster care.
It's completely, it can be completely different, and it depends on whether you've got a decent foster carer and a decent social worker.
Yeah, but Trish, can I just ask, because I know there's children that come into fostering because there's child protection involved. But then again, children with special needs, they do come through that route as well as children in need, because even a child in need would require like a social worker, or you would get a foster care if you had nowhere to put your child. So is that still the same case?
Sorry, it broke up then, Millie. I didn't hear what you'd said fully.
Yeah, I was just asking if it's still the same case, because for families with children with special needs, they will still come through that road, because obviously they're children in need if they needed help from the local authority.
Are you drawing?
Right. So I would actually say, when my children were in foster care, I got a lot more help than what I did now. Literally after our adoption, I was sort of like just left to do things on my own.
Okay.
And so I do believe, and it's why people aren't adopting as much anymore with older children or with children with special needs, is because all your help that you're getting beforehand just goes. They have a duty of care while they're in foster care. Once they're adopted, like my children, it was just like we were just left to sort it all out ourselves.
Become your own. So there's a message here. I've learned a lot on signposting a parent with child on the spectrum. So this is just a comment from somebody watching in terms of what they've picked up today. Innocent, did you have your hand up as we close, or was that an old hand?
Sorry, it was an old hand. I'll try and put it down.
Thank you very much. So once again, everyone, we've had 20 people on today. We get people joining all the time. Thank you very much for attending the safe space. This is your safe space. As I mentioned, we do record this and share it on your website. If you don't want your face to be onto it, I always ask people to take their cameras off. That's why majority of people take their cameras off. We do this every 2 weeks and we share the dates on the leaflet. So if you have a friend or somebody that you know that needs support or guidance or just needs to share, please do, signpost them to this group. And everything that we discuss here, we tend to say to people, it's confidential, but it's recorded. So it's a way of people learning. If you don't feel right to share on the forum, but you need a one-to-one that is confidential and private, please do reach out. I've put the email in the box. It's info@cphmindbodyandsoul.org.uk. I shared our website earlier on. We are a registered organization. And we do support people of BAME background who have children with autism or mental illness. We work with professionals and universities in terms of research, and we participate on seminars and any activities in relation to our objectives. So thank you very much, everyone, today. Thanks for attending, and have a wonderful, wonderful week ahead. Bye-bye.
Thank you too.